family. That is a brand new song to me. It's called Everyday Good by Yanti Niels, and it's so sweet and it's so perfect for our month of simplicity. Welcome. It's a marvelous Monday morning. You have Team Jennifer on the call with you as we get ready to dive into a new week, to set up our journals together, to share ideas, to encourage each other on. So I'm so honored that you've carved out this time for yourself to be with us. Be sure your chat is set to everyone because that's how we communicate with one another. If you see your name and it says two hosts and panelists, then chances are just myself and my co-facilitator, Jennifer Krippner, will be the only ones who see your message, which is okay. But if you want to engage with everybody else, be sure to do that. Jennifer just popped on to give you a wave. She'll be hanging out in that chat. Um, yeah, thanks, Carla. Man, I'm kind of embracing lipstick. Lipstick and sunglasses, right? You're ready to go. Is there anybody here for the first time? If you're checking out a social for the very first time, feel free to drop a me in the chat. It's optional to use the chat. Don't feel obligated to do that. But we do, this is a mics off, cameras off event. So you literally come as you are and you can be feeling great and we invite that. But if you're like a little off and not having a great day, but you are trying to, work this journaling adventure to your life, you're here. Gina's in her jammies. Gina, I would be in my jammies. Now I'm still nursing my cup of coffee. But we just say come as you are. You don't have to be feeling hyped if you're not. That's okay. Just be you while you're here. I dropped in today's daily affirmation, which is I nurture peace by keeping life uncomplicated. And the reason I'm sharing that this morning is I want you to look at my streak up there. See how it says 0 days? I know lots of us get very disappointed when we miss a day and we miss a streak. We mess up a streak and we're like, Dad gummit, I was doing so good. I had 92 days. And so what I decided to do a long time ago is my streak is right here when I write it in my journal. That's my streak. And I just quit affirming it. I affirm it by writing it in my journal. I put it in the one thing box every day. And sometimes I have to go back and catch up a little bit, but I'm giving you permission to use that affirmation in a way that feeds your soul and not makes you feel bad. So that I thought I need to shout that out sometime because I know that a lot of us perfectionists, recovering perfectionists, really love the streak. So just I affirm by writing it in my journal. All righty. So there's your takeaway from today. There's those community guidelines. We always share that when we are together with one another. We create the safe spaces for ourselves and for one another. I know you've seen these before, but if you are here for the first time, we do show these at every time, all the times we gather together, as well as you kind of read these as you joined Sonder Club. This has been kind of my ongoing quote for the month. Thinking about simplicity, and I've shared with y'all, I'm not a minimalist, and that's kind of the first thing that pops in my mind when I think about simplicity. But it's the ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary. And I think those two words, eliminate or three words, the unnecessary, so that the necessary may speak. That's kind of the mindset I've had as I've explored simplicity in my life. Like what's unnecessary? Some of it has to do with my thoughts. Some of it has to do with my physical stuff that I have, but all of it helps me kind of discern what simplicity looks like for me. This morning, we're going to dig into that mind map. If you happen to be here for the very first time, this is your bonus prompt for coming to a weekly social. It's not in your journal. You get to do this every week. We build. So we are actually on week 3 of looking at simplicity. We're going to do that rosebud thorn reflection together, celebrate each other's roses, and hopefully learn from our thorns and leave some of those behind if we can. And then then we'll do weekly setup where I have a ton of examples. You are invited to use your journal just as it's printed, but I'll also have some considerations for you to look at, maybe think about putting in your journal. And maybe it's not this week, but you may grab a screenshot because it may be something that speaks to you for the future. I do encourage you from time to time to change a few things up just to keep your journal fresh. That makes it kind of fun. And then we'll close out our time together. And today we're going to leave just like we've left this month by sharing the something that we are loving, that we're writing in that I am loving box, to a little song, and we will exit that way. So kind of be thinking about something simple in your life that is bringing you joy, that you are loving. So you can drop that in the chat. So I invite you to turn to your mind map. And if you are joining us for the first time, we are in week 3. This can be done anywhere in your journal. We've got some tips up there on the right, a blank page, use the definition page or the quote page. Perhaps you do it on your weekly scratch pad and go from week to week. You could use sticky notes. It's really up to you. I know lots of you might have a sidekick journal and you put your mind maps in those. So it's wherever you want. Mine goes in on the last page of my journal. That's a hint from our co-facilitator, Bailey, because she said when you do it on that last page, it's super easy to find. There are the 3 weeks for the month. So the first week we looked at the physical possessions that don't really serve a purpose in our life, maybe gave us some ideas for, some considerations about what can we eliminate, right? That's not necessary. And then last week was looking at the commitments that we are involved in or the activities that we are involved in, doing a little check-in to make sure that they are still serving us, we are serving them with vitality, that it is, are there things that we can eliminate and take off to have a more simplistic life? And then this week, we are just thinking about, where do you feel overwhelmed right now, mentally, emotionally, or physically? And what small step could you take to bring more simplicity? So let me share the direction I went in for where I have a little overwhelm, but I've also got some other ideas for you to consider in the frame of this question this week. So I love this quote about, maybe the journey isn't about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so that you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. And those feelings of overwhelm do not serve us well. We need to get rid of those. And I started thinking about, I've shared with you, I'm part of Philanthropic Educational Organization, which is a women's educational philanthropy that does grants, very low cost, low interest loans, and scholarships for women in all stages of their educational journey. And so my local chapter asked me to be president. So I'm serving as president this year. I went to the state conference, and last week we got our charges as chapters for the year, kind of that. Here's where we're going, and I'm challenging. The president was challenging all the chapters in Texas with milestones. And I was starting to feel a little overwhelmed. I'm sort of new to the organization, maybe serving a little prematurely as the leader for my chapter. And I started feeling very overwhelmed. And then I stopped and I thought, one thing I can do that I'm terrible about is ask for help. That's a very simple step. There are people who have served in this role before me. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. I know this. I love to offer help. I love to be on that end of the deal. I'm terrible about asking for help. So it just made me stop and think that I have people and resources I can turn to, and all it takes is asking for help. So maybe that speaks to you. There's also this idea of what needs to be de-stressed in our life. So here's, you're going to see this graphic again in this presentation this morning, but maybe there's something on here that will help you eliminate that overwhelmed feeling, or take a look at the graphic on the right about what is taking your energy And how could you counter that with something that will give you energy? So, looking at both of those, maybe that energy giver will be that one thing for you. Um, Another shout out to the 7 types of rest. I know, and I'm sure you know this as well. When you feel tired and you're not getting enough good rest in all areas or one area of your life, you feel overwhelmed, you feel off balance. So maybe a deeper dive into a particular type of rest that is missing from your life. So I've got this graphic here for you to maybe grab the one thing you can do from there. And finally, I'm going to challenge you to take that one thing and think about maybe what it looks like if it's aligned with a goal this week or a to-do list, or maybe you drop it into that habit tracker right now to hold yourself accountable for figuring out, how to incorporate that one thing you can do to eliminate that feeling of overwhelm in your life. So let me put on some music and I'll go back through these slides and kind of, what's popping up for you? What are you thinking about? Because certainly you're going to be able to support one another through those things that are coming to mind. All right. Thanks for starting to consider the area of overwhelm that you can kind of tackle with maybe that one small thing. Desiree shouted out to, summer is here and the kids are home and that new routine. And, I was an educator and I can remember in summer how messy the house would get because we were there all day, right? And living in it and it's hard to not have those feelings of overwhelm when there's people everywhere and stuff everywhere. So, think of just that maybe one thing that you can be very intentional with to know like, okay, this is a mess, but I'm doing this and then the rest will eventually take care of itself. It may be August before it does. But anyway, thanks for kind of digging into that. and taking a look at what you can do to get rid of a little feeling of overwhelm. And I really do hope that you were able to find a space in that habit or that activity tracker to hold yourself accountable for that one thing. Now let's take a look at our rosebud thorn reflection over this past week. We're going to be on page 44 this morning. And of course, the thorns are the things that are really tricky and that are not fun. The challenges that came your way. And we've talked about how we have some challenges that are just always there. You might be a caregiver to someone who is going through health crisis, or maybe it's your health. So some thorns stick around, right? And then other thorns are kind of temporary. And so I always encourage you to think about, this was awful, or this did not feel good, but what is your lesson and what is your takeaway? And the fact that you survived the week with that thorn is something to be proud of. So think about that reflection. For me, it's just, the hot days are here. I love summer and I love gardening and that kind of stuff, but like we were like looking at 100 degrees before the month of May, and I'm a little upset about that because my tomato blooms are setting. And if it's too hot, they won't set. I'm like, let me at least just have this month of May before we get those hot Texas days. So I was a little miffed about that because I've been pouring a lot of time into that. Your bud is something you're looking forward to, something that's in the works. We are taking a family trip to Florida in June. That's going to be kind of toward the end of June. I'm getting very excited about it. And I laugh because said, there's a difference between family trip and vacation. So this is a family trip because we're going with the grandkids. So, we're going to come home super tired, but we're very excited about our family trip. And hopefully I'll be able to get a vacation in sometime when I don't have to think or do anything. But that's the bud. That's the thing that's like motivating me and giving me a lot of energy. And then my rose, y'all, we had the Texas Fort Worth area meetup yesterday. So we went from Zoom to room. And here are some members of the Sonder family digging into their journal, sharing tips. We did a supply swap. We just visited about our Silk and Sonder journey. And it was very, very, very neat to connect in real life. We had the best time. We made a summer self-care bingo together that we're all going to, conquer over the summer. So, and yes, some of the facilitators are getting it together. Jennifer is going to do one in like that Minnesota area. I'm hoping to do one in Austin when I visit my daughter sometime. That might be in the fall, but we're slowly kind of looking at what this looks like and how it's going to be. Bailey's looking at one in Tennessee. So hopefully we'll be able to start getting this and get some learnings to maybe share with y'all. And then maybe we can get some like little team leads to do some local gatherings. So anyhow, that was my rose to get. Wish I could hug all of y'all in real life. Let me put on some music while you consider your week. What were your roses? What are you looking forward to? And what kind of things do you need support in? And put those thorns in the chat and just let us know so that like we can be of one accord and be thinking of each other through those totally tough times. Anyhow, I'll be back to check in. Ooh, there's some tough thorns this week. Some of you all have not been feeling well. Beth lost someone. Um, Beth, I'm so sorry. That's really hard. Thank y'all for letting us share those burdens, those things that are really tough. I'm so sorry. We gotta know. I'm looking through here. There's no judgment here, Sarah. You'll get it. You got it. You'll, and then I was looking, let's see, we've got some migraine and the things that our bodies do that bring us kind of I love that, the IEP went well and that you felt heard. That's so important. Abby had somebody break into their cabin. Man, that is just, I don't like that feeling. I'm sorry that you're dealing with that, but I'm glad that it wasn't terrible, terrible. And then Janine, she said something wonderful just happened. So I'm not sure if you're going to share that, but we're glad for you that something wonderful is in your midst. That's a pretty great thing. So thanks for leaning into this and embracing this rosebud thorn exercise. There's a lot of power in being able to put things down on paper. I'm going to invite you to share, as you're comfortable in Sonder Club, any images of how your journal is set up. That's where we can get things to share with y'all. So when we're finished, if you don't mind, maybe go pop into Sonder Club and share a part of your journal. This morning we're working on pages 46 and 47. And I thought this was a very simple, sweet thing to think about. That this week we promise ourselves to stop doubting and trusting our potential. That we will spend time each day to take care of ourselves. We're going to do maybe something that scares us a little bit, and then we're going to learn to appreciate the little unnoticeable blessings. So I thought that was a really great mindset to jump into the week. So here's that list that I share every week of all the different things you can consider popping into any of these spaces in your journal. So if you can grab a screenshot if this is something that's speaking to you, you might want to consider that. And also remember that this session, as well as all the other socials, are recorded, so you can always access these on that YouTube channel. Here's a couple of examples from last week's setup of Sonder Club. And I pulled these out. I wanted to show you that, the feeling that the person wants to have on the right is I want to be prepared. And then they carried that down into their major goals for the week. I am prepared for healthy meals, kids at home, theater performances. The one on the left is not doing the habit and activity tracker that week. And that's a wonderful reminder to take what you need out of your journal. And they just kind of cut some images that spoke to them about simplicity. Their to-do list is going to be a bingo board to kind of gamify those things, those tasks that are on their board or on their list for the week. I love the idea of I want to feel CEO of my life, be that chief executive officer. So anyway, just a couple of examples from y'all that I wanted to share back with you. And oh, Janine just shared. So yay, Janine. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you feel reconciled with that with your daughter. That's perfect. That's a great Monday morning jump start, right? To feel like, okay, we're good. Let's take a look now at how we want to feel this week. And you may already know, but if you're not sure, maybe stop for a moment and let's use the steps on this graphic that is on the screen. Like do a check-in and ask yourself how you're feeling right now and how those feelings are impacting you. And then think about the options for what you're dealing, how you could deal with that situation. And then think about your core values and think about one thing you can do to kind of align your feeling up with those core values. And there's a lot of ways to embrace this little section. There's some tips there. But I also want us to take a look at this feelings wheel. We don't always pull this one up for our weekly setups. You see it oftentimes in our monthly setup. But maybe you have some feelings that are evoking fear or anger or sadness, or maybe even surprise, but kind of in that negative way. And so if you're checking in with yourself and you're feeling that way, maybe slide into this feelings wheel. And maybe there is a word there that you could gravitate to sort of do a flip on the feeling that might be a little overwhelming. And Jennifer has dropped the link to the blog on Silk and Saunders site about setting up our mood trackers. And within that blog is this feelings wheel. So that's a great link to share or to save as a or bookmark so that you can go and access this feelings wheel, because sometimes just looking at these words can something will jump out at you and it's like, yeah, that's the feeling I want to have. So I'll ask you, put in the chat how you want to feel this week. What is the week going to bring you? I've chosen calm and mindful this week. I'm driving to visit my mom. We've got a doctor's appointment. She lives a different kind of life than I do. She embraces life differently. She's a little bit of a gloomy rain cloud, and so I want to be calm and mindful. I don't want to get sucked down into that, and I don't want to get judgy, right? I just want to be calm and be there for her and give her what needs to happen this week. Desiree is looking for leadership in her life this week. Danielle wants to be intentional with the week, with how she's going to set up her goals and her to dos. And Alexander, yes, hydrated is great, right? We function better when we're hydrated, peaceful. Do the hard things, Amanda. Yes, you're looking for that this week. Patricia says present. Sandra's wanting to feel calmness. Oh, Carla, I love that word. I want to feel enchanted with myself and my surroundings. What a lovely word. I feel like there's got to be like some fairy godmother stickers that could go with that one. Alice is looking to feel accomplished, joyful from Beth, focused. Yes, do three things well each day. I bet, Abby, you can incorporate that into the rest of your setup. I love that, getting very, honing in on that. Gina is looking at vibrant. Y'all have some great words. Maybe you're just defaulting to your word of the year, perhaps. That's the word that you're just bringing forward into every single week. So, you do what serves you the best. So remember, like with our goals, if the plan isn't working, don't change that goal, change the plan. Go about it from a different perspective. So let's look at our goals this week and think about that feeling that you just said you want to have. How will your goals support that feeling this week? And so for me, with calm and mindfulness, my three goals are I want to do my declutter challenge that I'm self challenging. My second goal is bring only joy to moms. And then my third goal is just getting some of my household chores tackled. And then that will be fleshed out through my to do list. But you can see some folks are holding themselves accountable in their goals by doing some little daily check-ins. And so I love that idea. Like if that's what you need so that you can check it and know that you're being intentional with that. Here's some more ideas of that. A lot of us will choose three categories and plug a goal in for that. So there's a couple of examples. The middle and the one on the right definitely have those categories. The one on the left, it's like, they're focusing on some of those things that bring them joy. So, what movie and show am I going to watch? What book am I reading? What creative projects? So, talk about some self care, like doing those things that really bring joy. There's a lot of ways to repurpose this space, and it's okay to not set up goals for the week. If your to-dos are what's going to drive you, and maybe that one goal is get the to-dos done, maybe you use the space in a different way. If so, drop that in the chat. I also want to shout out to instead of 3 goals for the week, the person there on the right, that little example says 3 values for the week. So maybe those values are what is going, they're going to support that feeling this person wanted to happen. And I'm going to go back through all of these slides while you work on this page. So now we'll take those goals and maybe slide over into our to-dos. This is a graphic I've shared before, but I think it's always worth looking at, maybe on a monthly basis. So here we are. If you notice, this person's one goal was to unplug, and they've given themselves like this menu of ways to unplug. So it's there. The ideas are there. They're not left to their own mind like it's in writing. And then they've put unplug also down in their activity tracker. So they're doing that kind of, yes, 5 times this week, I unplugged and I went to this menu, and here are the ways I'm holding myself accountable to unplugging. So I love sharing this graphic. I think it's really a beautiful way of working on that goal. Here are those goals and to-dos that are connected to each other, right? So you look at your goals and then you bring your to-dos over to support those goals. That's a great way of framing this out. Now, I look at both of these to-do sections. They've been changed up. They've been tweaked a little bit. So we've got, how do I want to be this week for the person that is on the top? So I'm using those goals, but through the lens of weekly to be's, and then maybe their daily to-dos are on their weekly spread. The one on the bottom, what am I saying no to? How am I protecting my boundaries? How am I getting rid of that overwhelm? So, there we go with that. And then when we make a to-do list, always remember, be concrete, assign a priority. We've got a couple of tools for that that I'll share. Plan time in your schedule. And then group those tasks, like you can see there's self and home and others, or the need, want, and wish. Group them together. List only as many things as can be realistically accomplished. And I had to bring a lot of to-dos over from last week, just because I didn't get them done. So, like my undones are kind of part of my to-dos this week. Cross them off and then start over again. And that graphic's actually from the Wall Street Journal on a great article about to-do lists. And here are 2 tools that we always like to just remind you of. So we've got that Eisenhower matrix that takes all the to-dos and makes them, get placed into these boxes so that your number one box becomes your priority. Those things that are important and urgent, and then the things that are not, that you deem not so important and not so urgent, can go in quadrant 4, and that can be done later, right? Or deferred until the time is better. But it really is a good one for sorting. My brain's everywhere. So I like kind of being able to hone in. Also, the Pomodoro technique, we talk about that with the time constrained work sessions. And you can do versions of this by time boxing or time blocking in your journal. And I've shared before, something that works for me is maybe setting a 15-minute timer and just like, okay, you're going to tackle the right side of your closet for 15 minutes. And when I'm focused like that, I can get more done than if I just say, go take a look at your closet, right? So maybe that time constrained thing will work for you. And then there's this technique that came out of the Toyota manufacturing world called Kanban. And you can maybe get little post-it notes and do this in your journal. And maybe one of your notes pages becomes your to-dos for the whole month. And you can move these post-it notes, right? According to like, what are you currently working on and what is done. And maybe this could be done for like those things that repeat week after week. So, they all go to the to-do list on the beginning of the month. And then as you work through them, they get moved. And I also said this would be a great one for like the refrigerator and the family tasks that need to get done. There's some satisfaction in being able to move those things over from being, the to-dos to in progress to being done. So just another fun idea to share with you in your journal. Again, here are some great to-do lists set up in like to do now and later, like the one you see on the left, and they're just kind of categorized according to these people's lives. But look at the one on the right, upper right. There's kind of that every week list of things to do, and then this week. So what's special to this week? So broken down, um, just kind of helps you sort that kind of thing. Maybe you need a to don't list. And then we're going to take a quick look at the habit and activity tracker, and then I'll put on music and go back through all of these slides while you work on it. Here are some micro habits, those little bitty steps that can create really big results in your life. Remember, James Clear says when you start a new habit, you got to show up. Your new habit should take less than 2 minutes. He wants you to bite off little bitty bites, and start with he calls them gateway habits. So instead of saying, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps every day, that habit becomes, I put on my running shoes, right? Or keep the house tidy, which feels big, becomes put one item of dirty clothing in the laundry. So really breaking it down, because that micro habit can lead to other things, big things, and help you feel successful because you did that one small thing, and maybe it gateways into other habits. And it's always good to maybe pair these things together. I've got a great example to show you on in when we work on the next section of our journal. But like, you might want to think about, after I do blank. Something I've started doing: when I brush my teeth, I stand on one foot. So I brush and balance. So it was after, while mine became, while I brush my teeth, I stand on one foot, because I'm working on balance, because I'm older and that's important. And so it's become these two things. I look like a crazy girl doing it, but I'm getting those balance moments in, because I'm not a huge exerciser, and this makes me be sure I'm doing it every single day. Again, what are you cutting out this month to maybe take away some of that overwhelm? That could go in this habit and activity section. A shout out to Kimberly L's reward system that she built into her habit and activity tracker. So she did set goals. You don't have to set goals, but she set goals. And if she met the goal, she rewarded herself with just a little something, something. And yes, Aunt Annie does squats while she brushes her teeth. Good job. It's again that pairing, that habit stacking. But I love the one that really spoke to me was the reward was the 1 hour of mindless scrolling, because we all love our social medias, but we know how it hooks us in, and then we're like feeling guilty. Well, this is done without guilt, because she met a goal, right? So I love that reward system. I thought that was kind of fun to share with y'all. So are there a couple of things you could reward yourself with because you accomplished a task you wanted to do? Again, you don't have to set a goal. You can just straight up track, like you see the one in the upper middle doing. I love the veggies and fruit. That's a fun way to lean into your nourishment. Perhaps this week is not the week to do habits and activities. Go ahead and give yourself grace, like you see the one there. And then there's some habit tracker ideas for simplicity. I'm going to put on some music while you work on this, and I'll go back through these slides. And if something spoke to you, grab a screenshot or a photo of it so that maybe you can think about it for later. Maybe you're not going to use it now, but it's something you might want to incorporate at a later time. And let us know what you do. I want to shout out because Sherry said that for the first time in about a year, I've tried to include myself in my to-dos. I've made myself an afterthought, and I'm finally realizing how much this has happened. And that's so interesting, Sherry, because yesterday at our live event, with the group that met, we talked about like Silk and Sonder. How did we find it? Why? How has it worked? And all of us said, we never thought about the import, like we knew, like, put your oxygen mask on first, but like we never really did it until we had this tool to put it in writing to hold ourselves accountable. So I love that you shared that because I think we can all relate to that, right? We're just out there doing it, right? And we like, wait, we're not we're not taking care of ourselves. And it really does impact our world when we do that. So as you're finishing up this page, we're going to start talking about the next page, the side B of the record album. And here are two examples that I pulled to share with you this morning. The one on the right, you're always invited to use your spaces just as they are printed in your journal, but we do have a lot of ideas for repurposing these sections. The one on the right is going to use their meal planner for the affirmations. We love those big, juicy, I always say those juicy blocks. The one on the left, look at this, prepare your mind, strategy, body, skills, finances, family, soul. So really leaning into all these different areas of life. This feels like a lot of intention work, right? With that. So, oh, Heather, thank you for dropping that in Sonder Club so I could pull that and share with everybody. You're doing your shopping list as a bingo board. That's what I always do. I love a little bingo every week. And then I love how you are filling your cup and you put that in that mind body health section. So really, you're seeing it, you've put some power behind those words to do that. But you can see the one on the left, like in the shopping list, there is a beautiful quote, a kind of that motivation for the week. So I've got the prepare your mind strategy body. I've got that graphic again so y'all can see that while we go through these slides. Here's what a couple of them look like if you're using them for a tracker or a meal planner. Definitely you can do that. Some ideas to repurpose, not exhaustive, but just some of those. Celeste, water drops for pills. I love that. And speaking of water drops, I'd love to see your example in Sonder Club. I want to point those water droplets out because maybe you're not tracking. Maybe you just have this big mug, and when it's gone, and you got your water for the day. You can definitely use this for hydration, color code it. You can be aware of what you're drinking and putting in your body. But also, I mentioned from time to time there are 8 little water droplets on here. Is there something you could use this for time-wise, like an hourly check-in during, an 8-hour period of time? Maybe it's just that kind of check-in and yep, I stopped for 5 seconds and took a deep breath, right? And you kind of monitor that at the top of the hour. Um, the one over there on the right, it's kind of the daily rating my energy for the day on a scale of 1 to 8. So like Monday energy levels were at a 6, but Tuesday energy levels were at a 3. And that kind of information can let you know, do I need to set something different up in my habits and activities? Or do I need to look at what I am, am I drinking enough? Am I eating the right things? Is that affecting my energy levels? So a shout out to those little water droplets. And then like Celeste said, she uses it maybe to track those pills that she's taking. So that's a great idea. Maybe you'll share that so we can we can all see that. Again, there's the meal plan for the soul, or maybe a little reflection of this week I read, reached out to, created, complete. I love those ideas of the intentionality. There's that prepare your slide again. A weekly reflection, word of the day. Maybe your wordle goes here. Your to-do list, affirmations. It's really using this as whatever, however it works in your life. I wanted to share this one from another one from Kimberly L because she's got some examples of habit stacking here. So, like on Monday, she's got her podcast and then folding, putting away laundry. So, making sure, that she's doing that. I often have an audio book on while I garden. Saturday, call mom on speaker and chat while you mop the floor. So, getting those, two birds with one stone, that habit stacking idea. So wanted to share that with you. And then the mind body health plan, maybe you need a little happiness challenge this week to get away from that feeling of overwhelm. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples. Perhaps something will speak to you if you're looking for a different way to set this up in your journal. The one on the bottom left there, it appears to me that this is kind of here's some activities I can do that will feed my spirit. And then the days that it happened, they went back and they drew a line. So, on Tuesday, I did something for my mindfulness and my rest and renewal. Sunday was rest and renewal and looking at the daily ritual and journal. So, sort of this menu to choose from each day. Love the one over there on the right, the W words to have a little fun with alliteration. I always say, this is a fun space to use for your self care, right? Like, what are you going to do for you this week? And maybe it's a little mini journal prompt. There's some self-care ideas. You could create a little bingo there. I always throw this one in every now and then, that get off my butt. Maybe you just need that one reminder to just move your body for the week. The shopping list again can be repurposed into anything. Maybe you put your main meal of the day in your shopping list because you're using your meal tracker for something else. There are some examples of how folks have set their shopping list up. There's my garden tracker. It's kind of been the same every week because I have those same wash, rinse, and repeat jobs to do. Hobby bingo, a place to doodle. Perhaps you're celebrating something this week. Do a birthday bingo or an anniversary bingo. And then there's a couple of examples of evening or nighttime routines. And the one on the bottom is one of my former ones because every now and then I got to get my rhythms and routines back in check because I stray from them. I really struggle with keeping a consistent routine. So I'll do my morning routine in my goals section and my evening routine in my shopping list just because of those fun little graphs there. So let me put on some music while you work on this space. We will then come back and we will close out with what we are loving for the week. Oh my goodness, the fastest hour of our week. So I want to thank y'all for being here this morning, for sharing in the chat, for support, all the support that you gave to one another this morning. Oh, it just lifted my heart. We are still doing the personalized life coach in your pocket. So, if Jennifer's going to drop some links in there, but go to our YouTube channel too, because there's some stuff that Meha has done explaining a little bit more about how our life coach works. And that will give you some gold if you are not part of that program, but you've been thinking about it. And then finally, like I said, Jen's going to drop a bunch of links in the chat. There's our playlist from this morning. I'm going to put on a little bit of music while we say goodbye to each other. And I would love to know what you are loving right now. What simple thing in your life is bringing you joy? Is it a product or something you've eaten or a new recipe? Just drop that in the chat together. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you soon. Maybe Tuesday night at our coloring social. Have a great week, Sonder family.